The office was quiet. The very rich father opened the door. On top of his desk, the triplets, who couldn't hear, were dancing barefoot next to a glowing speaker box. The maid, in a blue dress, smiled and guided the rhythm with her hands. What happened on that desk changed that family forever. Before we dive into the full story, let me know where you're watching from and what time it is. Now subscribe to the channel and let's get started. Why is there never any laughter in this house? Keisha Davis whispered to herself as she folded another perfectly pressed shirt. The massive bedroom around her felt cold despite the morning sunshine streaming through tall windows. Michael Thompson woke up at 5 o'clock in the morning. The alarm on his nightstand made a soft beeping sound. He turned it off quickly and sat up in his king-sized bed. Outside his window, the Boston skyline was still dark. His bedroom in the Beacon Hill mansion was bigger than most apartments, with high ceilings and expensive furniture that no one ever saw except him and the cleaning staff. Michael showered and dressed in a dark blue suit that cost more money than most people earned in 2 weeks. He walked to his large kitchen where his coffee was already prepared by the automatic machine he had programmed the night before. Sitting alone at the kitchen table, Michael opened his laptop and began reading company reports. His face showed no emotion as numbers and charts filled the screen. Thomson Technologies stock was up 3 points. The new software project was on schedule. The company merger talks were moving forward. When he finished his coffee, Michael stood and walked down the long hallway. He passed a closed door with colorful letters spelling Jacob, James, and Joshua. His steps slowed. For just a moment, his hand reached toward the doorknob but then dropped back to his side. He continued walking without opening the door. As Michael headed toward the front door, Keisha Davis entered the kitchen. She was 25 years old with dark braided hair and bright clothes that stood out against the mansion's gray and white colors. "Good morning, Mr. Thompson," Keisha said with a smile. "Morning," Michael replied without looking up from his phone. "I'll be late tonight. Board meeting." "Again?" Keisha asked, her voice gentle but firm. "The boys were hoping you might read with them tonight." Michael checked his watch. "I can't. The merger won't finalize itself." He picked up his briefcase. "Make sure Jacob takes his vitamins. And James has speech therapy at 3 o'clock. "And Joshua?" Keisha asked. Michael paused. "What about him?" "Nothing. I just thought you might ask about him too." Michael frowned slightly. "Just make sure they all follow their schedules." Then he was gone, the heavy front door closing behind him. Keisha sighed and began preparing breakfast. She took out 3 colorful plates and arranged fruit in smiling face patterns. She warmed maple syrup for the pancakes she would make fresh when the boys woke up. While the boys slept, Michael arrived at the gleaming glass Thomson Technologies building downtown. The security guards nodded respectfully as he passed. His assistant rushed to meet him with a stack of papers and a worried expression. "The board members are already in the conference room," she said, walking quickly beside him. "Mr. Feldman asked me to tell you that the Miller Group is getting nervous about the merger timeline." Michael nodded. "They're always nervous. That's why they need us." His voice was calm and confident, completely different from the quiet, uncertain tone he used at home. Back at the mansion, Keisha helped the triplets get dressed for the day. Though they looked identical with their blonde, curly hair and blue eyes, she never confused them. Jacob was the sensitive one who studied her face carefully. James was always moving, jumping on his bed even as she tried to pull his shirt over his head. Joshua was the observer, watching everything with thoughtful eyes. Keisha's hands moved quickly in front of her, forming shapes and gestures that the 5-year-old boys watched intently. She was using American Sign Language, though she had never told Michael that she had been teaching the boys to sign for almost 2 years. "Breakfast time," she signed, her fingers making the motions for eating. The boys grinned and signed back excitedly. After breakfast, the triplets played in their room with special toys that lit up and vibrated. Keisha had ordered them without telling Michael, using part of the household budget he never reviewed. Regular toys didn't capture the boys' attention the same way. At 2:30 in the afternoon, Keisha drove the boys to their speech therapy appointment. Dr. Patricia Martinez welcomed them with a warm smile, but her expression changed when she looked around the waiting room. "Mr. Thompson couldn't make it again?" she asked Keisha. Keisha shook her head. "Board meeting." Dr. Martinez frowned. "He's missed the last 6 sessions. The boys do better when parents are involved in the process." "I know," Keisha said quietly as the triplets played with the waiting room toys. "But I'm here, and we practice everything you show us." After speech therapy, they returned home. Instead of the usual educational activities scheduled by Michael's child development expert, Keisha took the boys to Michael's home office. She closed the door and pulled a small speaker from her bag. "Ready for our special music time?" She signed to the boys, who bounced excitedly. She placed the speaker on Michael's expensive wooden desk and helped the 3 small boys climb up. She turned on the speaker, which began emitting strong vibrations through the wood surface. The boys couldn't hear the music, but they could feel the beats pulsing through the desk and up through their feet. Jacob closed his eyes, feeling the rhythm. James began jumping up and down. Joshua sat down on the desk, placing both hands flat to better feel the vibrations. Keisha climbed up too, taking their hands and guiding them through movements that matched the beats. Soon all 4 were dancing on the massive desk, the boys' faces bright with joy. They rarely made vocal sounds, but now they were laughing, a sound so pure that Keisha wished Michael could hear it. At that exact moment, the office door swung open. Michael Thompson stood in the doorway, his face changing from surprise to shock to anger. His meeting had been canceled unexpectedly, bringing him home hours earlier than usual. "What is going on here?" Michael shouted, his voice sharp and loud. "Get down from there immediately! That desk is Brazilian mahogany!" The triplets froze, their laughter stopping instantly. They couldn't hear their father's words, but his angry expression needed no translation. Keisha, however, didn't move. Instead, she looked directly at Michael, something employees rarely did when he was angry. She took Jacob's small hand in hers and began forming shapes with her fingers. Sign language. Michael stood frozen, watching as his sons responded with their own hand movements. Their faces, which had been blank and guarded whenever he was around, were now alive with understanding. "They're talking," Michael whispered, his anger fading into confusion. "How are they talking?" Keisha continued signing to the boys, explaining something Michael couldn't understand. The children nodded and carefully climbed down from the desk. "It's called American Sign Language," Keisha said as the boys lined up beside her. "It's how your sons communicate when you're not watching." Michael stared at his 3 sons, these small versions of himself that had always felt like strangers. For the first time, he noticed how they stood confidently next to Keisha, how their eyes were bright and intelligent, how they moved their hands in patterns that clearly held meaning. "Since when do they—" Michael started, then stopped, not sure what question to ask first. "Since they were 3, Keisha answered. "I learned ASL from my cousin in Atlanta. Your sons are extremely smart, Mr. Thompson. They have a lot to say." She paused, then added quietly, "If anyone would listen." As Michael watched Keisha lead his sons from the room, something cold and painful settled in his chest. The realization that a woman he paid to clean his house knew his children in ways he never had. Michael stood in his office doorway for a long time after Keisha and the boys had left. The empty room felt different now. He walked slowly to his desk, running his fingers along the polished surface where his sons had been dancing. The next morning, Michael didn't leave for work at his usual early hour. Instead, he stood quietly in the hallway outside the kitchen, watching Keisha and the triplets at breakfast. Keisha sat between Jacob and James, with Joshua across from her. Her hands moved gracefully as she formed different shapes and patterns. "Good job," Keisha said as Joshua copied a sign perfectly. "That means breakfast. Try again, James, like this." She demonstrated the sign again. Michael stepped back when James looked toward the doorway. He wasn't ready to be seen. Not yet. At Thompson Technologies, Michael sat in his large corner office staring at his computer screen without really seeing it. The numbers and charts that usually held his complete attention now seemed unimportant. A knock on his door interrupted his thoughts. Robert Feldman, his longtime business partner and friend, entered without waiting for an answer. Robert was shorter than Michael, with gray hair and glasses that made him look like a professor rather than a business executive. "You missed 2 paragraphs in the Miller proposal," Robert said, placing a document on Michael's desk. "That's not like you." Michael picked up the paper. "Sorry, I'll fix it now." Robert sat down across from Michael. "Is everything okay? You seem distracted." "Everything's fine," Michael said quickly. "Just tired." "The merger is entering the critical phase. We need you focused," Robert said, then added more gently, "But if something's wrong, you can tell me." Michael nodded. "I know. It's nothing important." After Robert left, Michael closed his office door and opened a new browser window. He typed American Sign Language Basics into the search bar and began reading. That evening, Michael arrived home earlier than usual. He stopped outside his office when he heard soft music playing inside. Carefully, he peered through the partially open door. Keisha sat on the floor with the triplets. A guitar rested on her lap. She strummed it slowly, then guided each boy's hand to touch the wooden body of the instrument. "Feel that?" she asked. "That's what music feels like. The vibrations tell a story that your fingers can hear." The boys smiled, their small hands exploring the guitar. Joshua closed his eyes as he felt the vibrations. Michael stepped back, not wanting to interrupt. He went to his bedroom and changed out of his suit into more casual clothes. Then he walked to the kitchen and asked the cook to set an extra place at the dinner table. "I'll be eating with my sons tonight," he said. When dinner was ready, Michael entered the dining room. The triplets were already seated with Keisha helping them arrange their napkins. When they saw their father, the room went silent. "Good evening," Michael said, feeling strangely nervous. "I thought I would join you for dinner." Keisha looked surprised but quickly recovered. "That's wonderful, Mr. Thompson." She turned to the boys and made several hand movements. The triplets watched her intently. "What did you tell them?" Michael asked. "That their father wants to have dinner with them," Keisha said. "They don't see you at meals very often." Michael sat down at the head of the table. The silence was uncomfortable. He didn't know how to talk to his own children. "How was speech therapy today?" he finally asked. The boys looked at him blankly, then turned to Keisha. She signed his question to them. Jacob made a small hand gesture in response. "Jacob says it was good," Keisha translated. "He learned a new sound today." Michael nodded. "That's good." More silence followed. Michael watched as the boys communicated with Keisha using their hands. They seemed so comfortable with her, so natural. With him, they were like strangers. "Why don't you like our hands talking?" Jacob suddenly signed, with Keisha translating. Michael looked surprised. "It's not that I don't like it. I just don't understand it." "You could learn," Keisha suggested quietly. Before Michael could respond, Jacob reached for his milk glass but knocked it over instead. White liquid spread across the table and dripped onto the expensive carpet. "Be careful," Michael said sharply, standing up. "That carpet is hand-woven silk." Jacob couldn't hear the words, but his father's angry expression made him shrink back in his chair. Tears filled his eyes. "It was an accident," Keisha said, already cleaning up the spill. "He didn't mean to." Michael looked at his son's frightened face and felt ashamed. "I know. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have." But the damage was done. All three boys slipped out of their chairs and hurried from the room, leaving Michael alone with the mess. Later that night, Michael's phone rang. It was Robert calling about merger details. "The Miller Group wants to move up the timeline," Robert said. "They're getting pressure from their board." "I'll review everything tomorrow," Michael promised. "Are you sure you're okay?" Robert asked. "You seem distracted lately." "I'm fine," Michael insisted. "Just dealing with some things at home." After hanging up, Michael walked to his office to review some documents. As he approached his door, he noticed a piece of paper on the floor. Someone had slipped it under the door while he was on the phone. Michael picked it up. It was a drawing done in crayon. 3 small stick figures stood on one side of the page. A much taller figure stood far away on the opposite side. The small figures had sad faces. The tall figure was surrounded by what looked like computer screens. At the bottom, in the shaky handwriting of a 5-year-old, was written, "Jacob." His son had signed his artwork. Michael sat at his desk staring at the drawing for a long time. The message was clear even to someone who didn't understand sign language. His son saw him as a distant figure, unreachable. The next morning, Michael found Keisha in the kitchen preparing breakfast. "We need to talk," he said. Keisha straightened up, her expression guarded. "Yes, Mr. Thompson?" "You've been teaching my son's sign language without my permission," Michael said. "You've been making decisions about their education that aren't yours to make." Keisha took a deep breath. "With all due respect, sir, your sons needed a way to communicate. They were isolated and frustrated." "That's not your call to make," Michael insisted. "I've hired the best specialists. They have a treatment plan." "A plan to fix something that isn't broken," Keisha said firmly. "Your sons aren't broken, Mr. Thompson. They're deaf. There's a difference." "You're overstepping your role," Michael said, but his voice lacked conviction. "My role is to care for your children," Keisha replied. "That's exactly what I'm doing. The boys are thriving with sign language, not just surviving. They're smart and funny and creative. They have so much to say." She paused, then added more gently, "If only someone would listen." Michael wanted to be angry, but the drawing from Jacob kept appearing in his mind. "I don't know how to communicate with them," he admitted. "You could learn," Keisha suggested again. "It's not too late." Before Michael could respond, his phone buzzed with a calendar notification. He had forgotten about an appointment scheduled months ago. "Triplets kindergarten evaluation today, 9 a.m. Michael stared at the screen. He had never attended any of the boys' evaluations or appointments before, always sending an assistant instead. The notification forced him to make a choice. Continue being the distant figure in Jacob's drawing or take a step toward his son's. "I need to reschedule my morning meetings," Michael said, already dialing his assistant. "I'm going to the Triplets evaluation today." Keisha's surprise turned into a small smile. "I'll tell the boys. They'll be excited." As Michael waited for his assistant to answer, he glanced at his office door, thinking about the desk where his sons had been dancing. Perhaps there were more important things than Brazilian mahogany and merger deadlines after all. Dr. Patricia Martinez dropped her clipboard when Michael Thompson walked into the Massachusetts School for the Deaf lobby with Keisha and the Triplets. "Mr. Thompson," she said, recovering quickly. "This is quite a surprise." "I thought it was time I attended one of these evaluations myself," Michael said. Dr. Martinez smiled at the Triplets. "Boys, why don't you go with Miss Wilson to the play area while I talk to your dad?" She signed as she spoke, her hands moving fluidly. After the boys left with a young teacher, Dr. Martinez turned to Michael. "In 2 years, this is the first evaluation you've attended personally." Michael shifted uncomfortably. "I know, I should have come sooner." The evaluation took place in a bright classroom filled with colorful learning materials. Michael sat in a small chair designed for parents to observe. Keisha sat beside him. "Watch how they interact with the teachers," Keisha whispered. "See how different they are when they can fully communicate." The teacher, Miss Wilson, sat on the floor with the triplets and began signing. Michael was amazed at how quickly his sons responded. Jacob signed a detailed story about a drawing he had made. James demonstrated how high he could jump, signing numbers as he counted. Joshua carefully arranged blocks in patterns, signing questions about shapes and colors. They seemed so... Michael struggled to find the word. "Happy?" Keisha suggested. "Confident?" "Both," Michael admitted. "I've never seen them like this." An interpreter approached Michael. "Miss, Wilson is asking if you have any questions for her about the boys' progress." Michael looked at the teacher, who was waiting patiently. He had no idea what to ask or how to respond. "Tell her. Tell her they seem to be doing well." The interpreter signed his message. Miss Wilson smiled and signed back. "She says Jacob has a natural talent for storytelling through art. James excels in physical activities that involve counting and patterns. Joshua shows strong math skills already. They're all very bright." On the drive home, Michael sat in uncomfortable silence. He glanced at his sons in the rearview mirror. They were signing to each other, their small hands moving quickly. He couldn't understand a single gesture. "They're talking about the school," Keisha said, noticing his gaze. "They like the big playground." "How do you know what they're saying?" Michael asked. "Is it hard to learn? Sign language? It takes practice, like any language, but it's worth it." That evening, after the boys were asleep, Michael knocked on Keisha's door. She lived in a comfortable suite at the back of the mansion that had once been the housekeeper's quarters. "Mr. Thompson," she said, surprised. "Is everything okay?" "I want you to teach me," Michael said. "Sign language. The basics, at least." Keisha's eyes widened. "Really?" "Yes. I saw them today at the school. They have so much to say, and I can't understand any of it." "Learning will take time and patience," Keisha warned. "It's not something you can master in a weekend." "I understand," Michael said. They sat at Keisha's small kitchen table. She began with the alphabet, showing him how to form each letter with his fingers. "Your hands are stiff," she noted. "Try to relax them." Michael's fingers felt clumsy and uncooperative. The letter F was particularly difficult. After an hour, he was frustrated. "This is harder than I expected," he admitted. "It gets easier with practice," Keisha assured him. The boys didn't learn overnight either. As she demonstrated another sign, Michael asked, "Where did you learn all this?" Keisha hesitated before answering. "I wasn't always a housekeeper, Mr. Thompson. Before I moved to Boston, I was studying to become a deaf education specialist at Gallaudet University." "Gallaudet? It's the world's only university designed specifically for deaf and hard-of-hearing students. I had to drop out when my mother got sick. I needed money for her medical bills." Michael stared at her. "You were a deaf education student? Why didn't you tell me this when I hired you?" "You were looking for a housekeeper, not a teacher," Keisha said simply. "And at the time, you weren't interested in sign language for the boys." Before Michael could respond, the doorbell rang. It was almost 10 o'clock at night. "Are you expecting someone?" Keisha asked. They went downstairs together. Michael opened the front door to find an older woman standing there with 2 large suitcases. Gloria Thompson, Emma's mother, smiled tightly at her son-in-law. "Gloria," Michael said, surprised. "I didn't know you were coming." "Clearly," Gloria said, stepping inside. She was in her 60s with perfectly styled gray hair and expensive clothes. "You haven't been answering my calls, so I decided to see what's going on for myself." She looked at Keisha. "You must be the housekeeper. Please take my bags to the guest room. The blue one, not the green. The green room gets too much morning sun." "Gloria, this is Keisha Davis," Michael said. "She's more than just a housekeeper. She takes care of the boys." "I see," Gloria said, her tone suggesting she didn't approve. "Well, Ms. Davis, the bags, please." The next morning, Gloria joined Michael for breakfast. "I went in to see the boys earlier," she said. "They were making the strangest gestures with their hands." "They were signing," Michael explained, "using American Sign Language." Gloria put down her coffee cup. "Sign language?" "Michael, we've discussed this. The boys need to learn to read lips and speak. That's how they'll succeed in the real world." "Keisha thinks—" "The housekeeper?" Gloria interrupted. "You're taking educational advice from the help?" "She was training to be a deaf education specialist before she came to work for us," Michael said. "But she didn't finish her training, did she?" Gloria pointed out. Emma would have wanted the boys to have the best specialists, not someone who couldn't complete her education. Michael felt a flash of irritation. The boys seem happy using sign language. "Children are happy eating candy for dinner too," Gloria said. "That doesn't make it good for them." Later that day, Michael practiced finger spelling in front of his bathroom mirror. A BCD. His fingers kept making the wrong shapes. He tried again, remembering Keisha's advice to relax his hands. His phone rang. It was Robert calling about the merger. "We've got a problem," Robert said. "The Miller Group is threatening to back out. They say our technology division isn't innovative enough." "That's ridiculous," Michael said. "We're years ahead of our competitors. They need reassurance from you personally. Can you come in early tomorrow for an emergency meeting?" Michael glanced at his watch. He had promised to observe the boys' morning routine with Keisha. "I can't, Robert. I have an important commitment." "More important than saving the merger we've worked on for 6 months?" Robert sounded shocked. "I'll be in by 10, Michael compromised. "Not earlier." After hanging up, Michael continued practicing the alphabet. By midnight, his fingers ached, but he could form most letters correctly. The next morning, Michael kept his promise to observe the triplets' routine. He watched as Keisha helped them dress and prepare for the day, using signs to communicate each step. Joshua noticed his father watching and approached him cautiously. The boy made a sign, touching his forehead and then moving his hand forward. "What did he say?" Michael asked Keisha. "He signed father," Keisha explained. "But his form isn't quite right." She demonstrated the correct sign. Michael copied it, touching his thumb to his forehead and then extending his hand. Joshua smiled and nodded, making the sign back to him. "Good morning," Michael said slowly, attempting to sign the words as Keisha had taught him last night. Joshua's face lit up with surprise and delight. He signed something quickly to his brothers. Soon all 3 boys were watching their father with new interest. "They're excited that you're learning to sign," Keisha translated. At breakfast, Michael successfully signed good morning to each son. Their surprised smiles made the hours of practice worth it. As they were finishing breakfast, Gloria entered the kitchen. She watched with a frown as Keisha and the boys signed to each other. "Michael, I need to speak with you," she said. "I've scheduled appointments with the best oral-only program in New York next week. They can fix this signing nonsense and make the boys normal, just like Emma would have wanted." The triplets couldn't hear her words, but they noticed the tension in her face. Jacob looked worried. Joshua moved closer to Keisha. James continued eating, unaware of the brewing conflict. Michael looked from Gloria to his sons, then to Keisha. He had a decision to make about what kind of father he wanted to be and what future he wanted for his children. "I haven't agreed to any New York program," Michael said firmly, keeping his voice low so the boys wouldn't see his anger. "We need to discuss this privately, Gloria." He guided his mother-in-law to his office and closed the door. Gloria immediately picked up a framed photo of Emma from his desk. "Emma would want them to speak," Gloria said, touching the glass gently. "She loved music, Michael. She would sing to them before they were even born." Michael sat heavily in his chair. "I know what Emma loved, but we have to deal with who the boys are now, not who we wished they would be." "These sign language classes will isolate them," Gloria insisted. "The New York Institute for Spoken Language Development has an excellent success rate. Children learn to read lips and speak clearly. They become normal. Michael flinched at the word normal. The appointment is next Tuesday, Gloria continued. I've already arranged everything. Without asking me? Michael shook his head. You can't make these decisions, Gloria. Someone needs to, she replied. You've been absent for 5 years. Now suddenly you're interested because the housekeeper has filled the boys' heads with this signing business. Later that morning, Michael met Keisha at a coffee shop near Thompson Technologies. She was waiting with a man Michael didn't recognize. Mr. Thompson, this is Marcus Chen, Keisha said. He's an architect. He designed the new public library downtown. Marcus Chen stood and extended his hand. He was around 40 with a confident smile. Nice to meet you, he said clearly, though his speech had a slightly different rhythm than most people's. Marcus is deaf, Keisha explained. He's been deaf since birth. Michael shook Marcus's hand, surprised. You speak very well. Thank you, Marcus replied. I read lips and had years of speech therapy, but sign language is still my first language. They sat down together. Marcus took out his phone and typed quickly, then showed the screen to Michael. Keisha tells me your sons are deaf. How are they adapting? I'm not sure, Michael admitted. Until recently, I haven't been very involved. Marcus nodded and typed again. My parents struggled too. They wanted me to be fixed. They refused to learn sign language for years. What happened? Michael asked. They finally realized I wasn't broken, Marcus said aloud, his voice clear despite its unusual cadence. When they started learning sign language, we could finally talk about real things. Important things. Not just, did you eat? Or do your homework? Michael thought about his own limited conversations with his sons. Basic instructions, simple questions, nothing meaningful. How did your parents finally accept it? Michael asked. They met other deaf adults, Marcus typed. They saw we can have good lives. Different, but good. Michael's phone buzzed. It was Robert texting, Where are you? Investors waiting. Critical meeting. Michael texted back, Start without me. Family emergency. That afternoon, Michael sat in on James's speech therapy session. The therapist, a young woman named Lisa, worked with James on making B sounds. Put your lips together and blow, Lisa demonstrated. James watched her mouth carefully and tried to copy her. His attempt made a different sound. Lisa smiled encouragingly. Good try. Let's do it again. After 20 minutes, James grew frustrated. His eyes filled with tears. Let's take a break, Lisa suggested. She signed to James, showing him pictures of animals whose names started with B. James immediately perked up, signing back eagerly. He responds well to visual communication, Lisa told Michael. Speech is harder for him. His grandmother thinks he should be in an oral-only program, Michael said. Lisa frowned. That approach works for some children, but forcing it can cause frustration and low self-esteem. James shows strong language skills with ASL. When Michael returned to Thompson Technologies, Robert was waiting in his office. I had to lie to the investors, Robert said, his voice tight with anger. I told them you had food poisoning. I'm sorry, Michael said. My son had therapy. The board is noticing your absences, Robert warned. Carolyn Winters specifically asked if everything was okay with you. She's looking for any weakness, Michael. You know she's wanted your job for years. The merger is still on track, Michael pointed out. Barely, Robert replied. I'm covering for you, but I can't do it much longer. That evening, Michael found Joshua in the playroom. He sat down next to his son and slowly signed, What are you making? Joshua looked surprised but pleased. He signed back, showing Michael the block structure he was building. Michael struggled to understand. Again, please. Slower. Joshua patiently repeated his signs, correcting Michael's attempts to respond. For 20 minutes, they had their first real conversation. It was basic and full of mistakes, but Joshua smiled the entire time. Their moment was interrupted by shouting from downstairs. Michael found Gloria in the kitchen, waving papers at Keisha. "What is this?" Gloria demanded. "I found these forms in your desk." "Those are private," Keisha said calmly. "These are registration forms for some deaf community weekend program." Gloria turned to Michael. "Did you know about this?" Before Michael could answer, Keisha spoke. "The program brings deaf children together for activities and social interaction. It's healthy for the boys to meet other children like them." "You registered my grandsons without permission?" Gloria's voice rose higher. The triplets entered the kitchen for their afternoon snack. They looked confused by the angry faces. Jacob began watching Gloria intently, his body growing tense. "The boys enjoy the program," Keisha said. "They've made friends there." "This is completely inappropriate," Gloria said. "You've overstepped your position. Michael, you need to fire her immediately." Jacob's breathing became rapid. He covered his eyes with his hands, backing against the wall. "Stop it," Michael said. "You're upsetting Jacob." But Jacob was already in distress. He turned and ran from the room. Michael followed him upstairs and found him hiding in his bedroom closet, rocking back and forth. Michael knelt beside the closet door. Slowly, he signed the words he had been practicing. "Safe. You are safe. Dad is here." Jacob looked up, tears streaming down his face. Michael repeated the signs, adding, "No more fighting. I promise." It took 15 minutes of patient signing before Jacob allowed Michael to lead him out of the closet. Michael held his son close, feeling the small body gradually relax. When Jacob finally fell asleep, Michael went to Dr. Martinez's office. She had agreed to meet him after hours. "I need to understand what's best for my sons," Michael said. "Not what my mother-in-law wants. Not what I want. What they need." Dr. Martinez showed Michael 3 folders. "These are the progress reports for each of your sons." Michael reviewed the documents carefully. Jacob showed strong visual spatial skills but struggled with spoken language. Joshua was advancing in both sign language and speech therapy. James was falling behind in speech development but excelled at sign language. "James has the most difficulty with speech," Dr. Martinez explained. "Forcing an oral-only approach could damage his self-confidence and limit his cognitive development." "So what should I do?" Michael asked. "Support their strengths," Dr. Martinez advised. "Different approaches work for different children, even siblings. The most important thing is that they can communicate effectively and feel valued." When Michael returned home, he found Keisha in her room, packing her clothes into a suitcase. "What are you doing?" Michael asked. "I assumed you would want me to leave," Keisha said, not looking at him. "Gloria made it clear I've overstepped." "You enrolled the boys in that program without telling me," Michael said. "Yes," Keisha admitted. "I should have asked first." "But those programs aren't just for the boys. There's a parent group, too. 3 fathers of deaf children specifically asked if you would ever come. They've been exactly where you are right now." Michael stood in the doorway, watching Keisha pack. Her words made him realize how many parents had walked this path before him, facing the same fears and challenges. "I don't want you to leave," Michael said finally. "The boys need you. And I think I need you too." Keisha slowly put down the shirt she was folding. "You need me?" "I want you to teach me to sign," Michael said, the words coming out in a rush. "Really teach me, not just the basics." "Are you sure?" Keisha asked. "It will take time and practice." "A lot of practice." Michael nodded. "I'm sure. I want to understand my sons." Keisha thought for a moment. "I have conditions. First, you must practice every day, not just when it's convenient. Second, you need to attend the weekend deaf community program. And most importantly, you need to spend real time with your sons." "I accept all your conditions," Michael said without hesitation. They sat down at Keisha's small table. She pushed her suitcase aside. "Before we start, there's something I should have told you earlier," Keisha said. "I'm not just a housekeeper who happens to know sign language. Michael looked confused. What do you mean? Before moving to Boston, I was studying to become a deaf education specialist at Gallaudet University. It's the world's leading university for deaf students. You were in college? Why did you leave? My mother got sick, cancer. I needed money for her medical bills, so I dropped out and took this job. Keisha looked down at her hands. I planned to return to school once she recovered, but the bills kept coming. Michael stared at her. All this time I had a deaf education specialist living in my house and I didn't know it. I'm not fully certified, Keisha clarified. I was halfway through my degree. That's still more education than I have, Michael said. I wish you had told me sooner. The next morning, Michael called Robert. I need to adjust my schedule, Michael said. I'll still work full days Monday through Thursday, but I need Friday afternoons free. Is this about your kids again? Robert sounded concerned. Michael, the merger will still happen, Michael finished. I'm not abandoning the company, Robert. I'm just making room for my family too. That afternoon, Gloria cornered Michael in his study. Keisha is still here. I thought you would fire her after the program incident. She's staying, Michael said firmly. She knows what the boys need. And I don't? Gloria looked hurt. I was a mother too, Michael. I raised Emma. This is different, Michael said gently. The boys need special support that neither of us understood until now. Gloria's expression hardened. I'm trying to protect Emma's wishes. She wanted normal children. She wanted happy children, Michael corrected. And they're happier when they can communicate. On Saturday morning, Michael attended his first deaf community gathering. The event was held in a community center in Boston. Keisha drove, with Michael and the triplets in the back seat. I feel out of place, Michael admitted as they parked. Everyone does it first, Keisha assured him. Inside, about 20 families mingled in a large room. Children of various ages played together, their hands flying in animated conversations. Adults chatted in groups, some signing rapidly, others speaking and signing simultaneously. Michael stood awkwardly by the wall. The triplets immediately spotted other children they knew and ran to join them, leaving Michael alone. A man about Michael's age approached him. First time? He asked, signing and speaking together. Michael nodded. That obvious? The man laughed. You have the same deer-in-headlights look I had 2 years ago. I'm David Wilkins. My daughter Sophia is over there. He pointed to a girl around 7 years old who was signing with James. Michael Thompson. Those are my sons, Jacob, James, and Joshua. Triplets? David looked impressed. That must be challenging. I'm still learning how to be their father, Michael admitted. David nodded in understanding. When Sophia lost her hearing after meningitis, I was completely lost. I thought my relationship with her was over. What changed? Michael asked. I stopped trying to pull her into my world and stepped into hers instead, David said. I learned to sign, got involved in the deaf community, made her world bigger instead of trying to force her into a smaller one. David introduced Michael to other parents who shared similar stories. For the first time, Michael didn't feel alone in his struggles. When they returned home, Gloria was waiting. How was your little field trip? She asked coldly. Educational, Michael replied. I met other parents of deaf children. I called some board members at your company today, Gloria said. Robert Feldman seemed very concerned about your recent behavior. Michael felt a surge of anger. You called my board members? That was completely inappropriate. Someone needs to make you see reason, Gloria insisted. This deaf community nonsense is distracting you from your responsibilities. My sons are my responsibility too, Michael said firmly. Over the next week, Michael created a new evening routine. Instead of working late, he came home for dinner with his sons. Afterward, they gathered in the boys' bedroom for story time. Michael struggled through signing simple picture books, often needing Keisha's help. His fingers moved awkwardly, but he persisted even when frustrated. Again, Joshua would sign patiently when Michael made a mistake. Like this. He would demonstrate the correct sign, his small hands moving confidently. Each morning, Michael found drawings on his nightstand. Jacob had begun leaving pictures for his father, crayon illustrations of their family doing things together. At Thomson Technologies, Robert pulled Michael aside after a meeting. "Two board members called me asking if everything is okay with you," Robert said. "They mentioned concerns from your mother-in-law." Michael sighed. "Gloria doesn't approve of how I'm raising my sons. Carolyn Winters is suggesting we postpone the merger until you can give it your full attention," Robert warned. "Be careful, Michael. You've worked too hard to lose everything now." On Saturday, Thomson Technologies held its annual company picnic at Boston Common. The large park was filled with employees and their families enjoying food, games, and music. Michael stood proudly with his sons, attempting to sign with them in public for the first time. He felt self-conscious about his slow, imperfect signs, but the boys were patient with him. "Do you want ice cream?" Michael signed to James, who nodded enthusiastically. As Michael turned to the ice cream stand, a colorful butterfly flew past. James, captivated by the bright colors, followed it without hesitation. By the time Michael turned back, James was gone. "Where's James?" Michael signed to Jacob and Joshua, trying to keep his face calm. The boys looked around, then shook their heads. Michael's heart began to race. "Keisha!" Michael called. "James is missing!" They split up to search. Michael ran through the crowded park, calling James's name uselessly. His son couldn't hear him. He stopped people to ask if they'd seen a small boy with blonde hair, showing them a photo on his phone. Park security helped organize a search. Police officers arrived and began questioning witnesses. 1 hour passed, then 2. Michael's panic grew with each passing minute. "I should have been watching him more carefully," Michael told a police officer. "He's deaf. He can't hear us calling for him." "Does he know sign language?" the officer asked. "Yes, but that doesn't help if no one around him can sign," Michael said, the reality of his son's vulnerability hitting him fully. After 3 terrifying hours, a park ranger radioed that she had found a small boy by the duck pond, nearly half a mile from the picnic area. Michael ran there immediately. James sat on a bench watching ducks swim in the pond. He looked perfectly content, completely unaware of the panic he had caused. "James!" Michael signed with shaking hands. He knelt and hugged his son tightly. James looked confused by his father's emotion. He signed back excitedly about the butterfly and the ducks he had found. That night, after all 3 boys were safe in bed, Michael sat beside James, watching him sleep. The events of the day had shaken him deeply. For the first time, he truly understood how vulnerable his sons were in a world built for hearing people. James stirred and opened his eyes. He signed something Michael didn't understand. "What did he say?" Michael asked Keisha, who stood in the doorway. Keisha's eyes filled with tears as she translated, "He's asking if you were scared today and saying he's sorry he couldn't hear you calling his name. He wants to know if you're mad that his ears don't work." Michael felt his heart break. He carefully signed to James. "Not mad. Never mad about your ears. I was scared because I love you." James smiled sleepily and drifted back to sleep. Michael sat there long after, thinking about how much he still needed to learn to protect his son in a world where James couldn't hear danger coming. Michael barely slept that night. James's question kept repeating in his mind. "Are you mad that my ears don't work?" How could his son think that? The realization that James blamed himself for his deafness made Michael's chest hurt. Early the next morning, Michael opened his laptop and began researching American Sign Language more seriously. He ordered books, found online courses, and watched videos of people signing. He was still at it when Keisha found him at noon. "You didn't come down for breakfast," she said. "I've been busy." Michael showed her his screen. "I need to learn faster. James needed me yesterday, and I couldn't understand him." Keisha sat beside him. "Learning ASL takes time. You can't rush it." "I don't have time," Michael said. "They're growing up now. I've already missed 5 years." That afternoon, Michael cleared out the mansion's library. He moved the expensive furniture to storage and installed wall-to-wall mirrors so he could see his signing from all angles. He ordered visual learning aids, flashcards, and specialized lighting that wouldn't cast shadows on hands. "What's happening to the library?" Gloria asked, watching workers carry out antique bookshelves. "I'm turning it into a signing space," Michael explained. "Somewhere the family can practice together." Gloria frowned. Those bookshelves belonged to Emma's grandfather. "The boys can't read regular books yet," Michael said gently. "When they can, we'll bring the shelves back." At Thompson Technologies, the board called a meeting without Michael. Carolyn Winters, the vice president of operations, addressed the gathered executives. "I'm concerned about Michael's commitment to this company," she said. "The merger with Miller Group is the most important deal in our history, and Michael is taking Friday afternoons off." Robert defended his friend. "Michael is dealing with family matters. The merger is still on track." "Is it?" Carolyn raised an eyebrow. "Miller Group called me yesterday. They're getting nervous about Michael's availability." "Michael built this company from nothing," Robert reminded everyone. "He deserves some leeway." "No one is questioning his past contributions," Carolyn said smoothly. "We're concerned about his current focus." During lunch breaks at work, Michael practiced signing with flashcards. His assistant found him practicing finger spelling in his office between meetings. "Are you learning sign language, Mr. Thompson?" she asked. "Yes, my sons are deaf. My cousin is deaf," she said. "It took our family a while to accept it, too." Michael looked up. "Does everyone see it that way? That I haven't accepted my son's deafness?" "I didn't mean—" "No, you're right," Michael said. "I haven't accepted it. But I'm trying now." At home, Joshua began teaching Michael more advanced signs. They sat together in the new signing space, surrounded by mirrors. "This means future," Joshua signed, moving his hand forward from his cheek. Michael copied the movement. "Future. This is promise," Joshua continued, crossing his hands over his chest. "Promise," Michael repeated. "I promise to learn better." Joshua smiled. "You're getting better already." Later that evening, Michael found Keisha reviewing the boys' progress reports from school. "They're all doing well," she said, "especially since you've become more involved." "I should have done it sooner," Michael said. Keisha looked up at him. "You're doing it now. That's what matters." Their eyes met for a moment longer than usual. Michael noticed for the first time how the evening light made Keisha's skin glow. She seemed to notice something too because she quickly looked away. "We should review these signs for tomorrow," she said, her voice slightly different. The next night, Michael woke to the sound of soft crying. He found Jacob standing in his doorway, tears running down his face. "What's wrong?" Michael signed, his hands moving slowly but more confidently than before. Jacob signed back that he had a bad dream. In the past, Jacob would have gone to Keisha for comfort. Tonight, he had come to his father. Michael guided Jacob back to bed and sat with him, signing simple reassurances until his son fell asleep. The trust Jacob showed by seeking him out filled Michael with a feeling he couldn't name. At work, Michael found himself sketching designs during a board meeting. While Carolyn discussed quarterly projections, he drew a watch that would vibrate different patterns for different alerts. Phone calls, doorbells, alarms. "Michael, do you have thoughts on this?" Robert's voice broke through his concentration. "I'm sorry, what was the question?" Michael asked, quickly covering his drawings. Carolyn's eyes narrowed. "I was asking about the timeline for the Miller Group integration." "We're still on track for a third-quarter completion," Michael said smoothly, though he hadn't been following the discussion. After the meeting, Robert pulled Michael aside. "What were you drawing? I could see you weren't paying attention." Michael hesitated, then showed Robert his sketches. "I've been thinking about technology for deaf users. The current options are limited and expensive. This is what you're focusing on during a critical board meeting?" Robert looked concerned. The deaf and hard of hearing market is bigger than people realize, Michael said. Over 20 million Americans have hearing loss. Our technology could help them. Michael, this isn't our business model. Maybe it should be part of it, Michael argued. We make communication technology. Shouldn't it work for everyone? When Michael returned home that evening, Gloria was waiting with a guest, a distinguished-looking older man in an expensive suit. "Michael, this is Dr. Franklin Stevens," Gloria said. "He's the leading specialist in cochlear implants from New York. I invited him to dinner." Michael stared at his mother-in-law. "You invited him without telling me?" "I thought it would be helpful to hear about all our options," Gloria said smoothly. During dinner, Dr. Stevens spoke at length about cochlear implant surgery. The triplets watched him curiously, not understanding his words. "The procedure is quite routine now, Dr. Stevens explained. With early intervention, many children achieve near-normal hearing." "The boys are already 5 years old," Michael pointed out. "Is that still considered early?" "It's not ideal, but still beneficial, Dr. Stevens replied. "Of course, they would need intensive speech therapy afterward. I would recommend abandoning sign language entirely to force adaptation." Michael noticed Jacob watching Dr. Stevens's mouth with a confused expression. James had stopped eating and was looking to Keisha for explanation. Joshua seemed to be trying to read the doctor's lips. "Thank you for the information, Dr. Stevens," Michael said firmly. "But I think we've heard enough for tonight." "We've barely covered the basics, Dr. Stevens protested. "I understand, but I'd prefer not to discuss surgery options in front of my children," Michael said, standing up. "They may not hear your words, but they can see this is about them." After Dr. Stevens left, Gloria confronted Michael in the kitchen. "You were incredibly rude," she said. "Dr. Stevens is world-renowned. Do you know how hard it was to get him here?" "You should have asked me first," Michael replied. "These are my sons, Gloria. The decisions about their education and communication are mine to make. Emma would have wanted—" "Don't tell me what Emma would have wanted," Michael interrupted, his voice rising. "I loved her too, but she's not here, and I have to make these choices now." Gloria's eyes filled with tears. "I'm just trying to help." "I know," Michael said more gently, "but you need to respect my decisions even if you don't agree with them." The next morning, Gloria announced she was returning to Chicago. "I need some time," she told Michael. "This isn't what I expected for my grandsons." "I understand," Michael said, "but they're happy, Gloria. Isn't that what matters most?" After she left, Michael called Robert from his home office. "I need to talk to you about an idea," Michael said. "What if Thomson Technologies developed software and devices specifically designed for deaf users?" "You're serious about this?" Robert sounded surprised. "Completely," Michael replied. "I've been doing research. There's a real need and a real market." "The board will see it as a distraction from the merger," Robert warned. "Or they might see it as an expansion opportunity," Michael countered. "I've drafted some initial concepts. Can you come by tonight to look at them?" Later that evening, Robert reviewed Michael's hastily drafted proposal for deaf-accessible technology. He looked up with a mixture of surprise and admiration. "This could either save your job or end your career at Thomson Technologies," Robert said seriously. "Are you sure you're willing to risk everything on this?" Michael thought about James's question, if his father was mad that his ears didn't work. He thought about Jacob coming to him after a nightmare. He thought about Joshua patiently teaching him new signs. "Yes," Michael said without hesitation. "I'm sure." Robert helped Michael refine his proposal late into the night. They sat surrounded by sketches and market research in Michael's home office. The deaf and hard of hearing market in the United States alone is over 20 million people, Michael said, pointing to his research. Most technology companies ignore them completely. "These are impressive numbers," Robert admitted, "but the board will want more than just market size. They'll want to know why Thomson Technologies should enter this space now, during a merger. "Because we can do it better than anyone," Michael replied. "We already make communication technology. We just need to make it accessible to everyone." The next morning, Michael called Marcus Chen. "I need to meet with deaf engineers and technology experts," Michael explained. "People who understand both the technical challenges and the real needs of deaf users." Marcus agreed to help. "I know several deaf engineers who would be excited to consult on this. When can you meet them?" "As soon as possible," Michael said. "The triplets' 6th birthday is in 2 weeks, and I want to present this proposal to my board before then." 2 days later, Michael sat in a conference room with Marcus and 3 deaf engineers. They discussed technology gaps and possible solutions while an interpreter translated. Sarah Kim, a software engineer, explained her frustrations with existing products. "Most alarm systems for deaf people are either too expensive or don't work well. The same with baby monitors, doorbells, and phone notifications." "What about text-to-sign language translation?" Michael asked. "Is that technology reliable?" "Not yet," replied Thomas Wegner, a computer scientist. "Current programs are too literal. Sign language has its own grammar and structure, different from English." Michael took detailed notes. These are exactly the kinds of problems Thomson Technologies could solve. At Thomson Technologies, Carolyn Winters confronted Michael after a meeting. "I heard about your little side project," she said, her voice falsely sweet. "Deaf technology? That's quite a departure from our core business." "Accessibility technology," Michael corrected. "And it's not a departure, it's an expansion." "The board is already concerned about your commitment to the merger," Carolyn warned. "This won't help your case." "I'm still committed to the merger," Michael assured her. "But I believe this new direction could benefit the company too. How convenient that it aligns with your personal situation," Carolyn observed. "Yes, it is convenient," Michael agreed, surprising her. "I understand the need because I live with it. That's an advantage, not a conflict." At home, Michael and Keisha sat at the kitchen table planning the triplets' birthday celebration. "I want it to be special," Michael said. "Not just another party with clowns and magicians they can't fully appreciate." "What about an experience-based party?" Keisha suggested. "Stations with different visual and tactile activities." "Perfect," Michael agreed. "And I want to invite some special guests." "What kind of guests?" "Successful deaf adults with different careers," Michael explained. "I want the boys to see possibilities for their future." Keisha smiled. "That's a wonderful idea." The next day, Michael contacted deaf professionals he had met through Marcus. A scientist, an artist, a chef, and an athlete all agreed to attend. Most exciting was Elena Rodriguez, a deaf engineer who worked at NASA designing visual alert systems for spacecraft. "My sons will be amazed to meet a real NASA engineer," Michael told Elena during a video call with an interpreter. "I'm happy to show them that deaf people can do anything," Elena signed back, "including work in space programs." Michael also scheduled an appointment with Dr. Martinez to review the triplets' progress. "All 3 boys show significant improvement since you became involved, Dr. Martinez reported, showing Michael their latest evaluations. "Their cognitive and emotional development has accelerated." "What about their speech?" Michael asked. "It varies. Joshua shows the most progress with spoken language. Jacob is more comfortable with sign. James struggles with speech but excels at sign language. Gloria thinks they should focus only on speech," Michael said. "That approach would benefit Joshua but could frustrate James," Dr. Martinez explained. "Children learn best when we work with their strengths, not against them." As the birthday and board presentation approached, Michael worked increasingly long hours. He practiced ASL late into the night, often falling asleep surrounded by books and flashcards. One night, Keisha found him asleep at his desk, his head resting on an open ASL textbook. She gently touched his shoulder. "Michael," she said softly. It was the first time she had called him by his first name instead of Mr. Thompson. Michael woke with a start. "What time is it?" "Almost midnight," Keisha said. "You should sleep in a real bed." Michael rubbed his eyes. "I need to finish these signs. I want to tell the boys about Emma at their birthday party." Keisha sat down across from him. "Tell me about her." Michael hesitated, then slowly began to speak. Emma loved music. She played piano and sang in a choir. When she was pregnant, she would put headphones on her belly so the babies could hear classical music. "She sounds wonderful," Keisha said. "She would have been a great mother," Michael continued. "I've been a poor substitute." "You're learning," Keisha assured him. "That's what matters." "I feel guilty," Michael admitted. "Emma would have handled this so much better. She would have learned sign language immediately. She wouldn't have hidden from her own children for 5 years. Keisha reached across the desk and touched his hand. "The best way to honor Emma isn't to guess what she would have wanted. It's to love the boys for exactly who they are." The day before the triplets' birthday, Michael presented his accessibility technology initiative to the board. He showed prototypes for devices that converted sound to visual and tactile signals and software that translated spoken language to text in real time. The deaf and hard of hearing market represents over 20 million Americans, Michael explained, yet few technology companies address their needs effectively. Carolyn Winters interrupted. "This is completely outside our established business model. Why risk our resources on an unproven market during a critical merger?" Michael was prepared for this question. "I've brought letters of interest from 5 major companies," he said, distributing documents. "These companies see the potential value in our accessibility innovations." Several board members looked impressed as they reviewed the letters, arranged through Marcus Chen's industry connections. "Additionally," Michael continued, "these technologies have applications beyond the deaf community. Noise-canceling environments, language translation services, and hands-free operations could all benefit from these innovations." When the presentation ended, the board agreed to take a week to consider the proposal. The vote was scheduled for the following Thursday, just after the triplets' birthday. As the board members filed out, Robert approached Michael. "You did well," he said. "I think you won over at least half of them." "And the other half?" "Firmly in Carolyn's camp," Robert admitted. "It will be close." That evening, Michael helped the boys shop for party decorations. In a party supply store, he practiced signing with them in public. "Do you like these balloons?" He signed to Jacob, who nodded enthusiastically. A woman shopping nearby stared at them, then whispered loudly to her friend, "Why is he moving his hands like that? It looks weird." Michael turned to face the woman. "I'm using American Sign Language to talk with my sons, who are deaf," he said firmly. "There's nothing weird about it." The woman looked embarrassed and quickly moved away. "What did that lady say?" Joshua signed to his father. Michael hesitated, then signed back. "Nothing important. Let's find some more decorations." Late that night, Michael put the finishing touches on the birthday preparations. He wanted everything to be perfect. As he searched for tape in Emma's old desk drawer, he found a small box he had never noticed before. Inside were 3 identical baby bracelets from the hospital, tiny bands that had once circled his son's wrists when they were newborns. Beneath the bracelets was an envelope with Michael's name written in Emma's handwriting. The note on the outside read, "To my husband, to be opened when our children turn 6. Michael's hands trembled as he held the unopened letter. Emma had written this before she died, before she knew about the triplets' deafness. Tomorrow his sons would turn 6. The time had come to read Emma's final message to him. Michael woke up before dawn on the triplets' birthday. He sat in his study with Emma's unopened letter in his hands, gathering courage to read her final words. Finally, he carefully broke the seal and unfolded the yellowed paper. "My dearest Michael," Emma had written, "if you're reading this, our babies are turning 6 today, and I've been gone for a long time. I hope the years have been kind to you and our children. I'm writing this during my last month of pregnancy, filled with hopes and dreams for our future family." Michael's eyes filled with tears as he continued reading. "I don't know if we'll have boys or girls or both, but I know they will be loved. Whatever challenges our children face, I know you'll find the strength to guide them. Your love is bigger than your fear, Michael." These words hit Michael with powerful emotion. Emma had believed in him even when he didn't believe in himself. She had trusted him to overcome his fears, and until recently, he had failed that trust completely. He read the letter twice more before carefully folding it and placing it in his pocket. Today, he would finally be the father Emma had believed he could be. At 7 o'clock, Michael quietly entered the triplets' bedroom. Their doors were already decorated with colorful streamers and pictures. He had put them up after the boys went to sleep. "Happy birthday." Michael signed carefully to each son as they woke up. He had practiced for hours to get the signs perfect. The boys stared in surprise before breaking into excited smiles. They jumped out of bed and hugged their father. "We have a special day planned," Michael signed. "First, breakfast, then surprises." After breakfast, Michael and Keisha led the boys to the backyard. When they opened the door, the triplets froze in amazement. The large yard had been transformed overnight. There were 6 different activity stations: a watercolor painting area where colors blended visibly, a percussion section with drums and instruments that created vibrations the boys could feel, a storytelling corner with ASL interpreters, and more. "This is all for us?" Joshua signed, his eyes wide. "All for you," Michael confirmed. "Go explore." The boys ran to the nearest station, where they found large art canvases waiting. Joshua immediately began painting while James explored the drum section. Jacob hung back, watching his father with a small smile. The first special guest arrived at 10 o'clock. Marcus Chen walked in carrying architectural models the boys could touch and explore. "These are buildings I designed," Marcus signed to the triplets. "This one is the new public library downtown." The boys gathered around, fascinated by the detailed miniature buildings. Joshua had many questions, which Marcus answered patiently. "Is it hard to be an architect when you're deaf?" James signed. "Sometimes people think it will be," Marcus replied. "But being deaf helps me focus on the visual details that others might miss." Throughout the morning, more guests arrived. A deaf chef named Tony brought special treats and showed the boys how to decorate cookies. A deaf artist named Maria demonstrated painting techniques. The most exciting guest was Elena Rodriguez from NASA. She brought miniature models of spacecraft with visual alert systems she had designed. "These lights flash different colors to tell astronauts important information," Elena explained, demonstrating how they worked. "Does being deaf make your job harder?" James asked her. "Sometimes," Elena signed back thoughtfully. "But it also helps me notice visual patterns that hearing people miss. NASA needs people who think differently." Michael watched his sons interact with these successful deaf adults. For the first time, he saw his son's deafness not as a limitation, but as a different way of experiencing the world, one with its own strengths. Around noon, an unexpected visitor arrived. Gloria Thompson stood at the garden gate, holding 3 gift boxes. "I hope I'm still welcome," she said hesitantly. Michael walked over to her. "Of course you are. They're your grandsons." "I've been thinking about what you said," Gloria admitted, "about accepting them for who they are." She knelt down as the boys ran to greet her. With Keisha translating, Gloria presented each boy with a wrapped gift. Inside each box was a custom-made children's book about a deaf superhero who saved the day precisely because of his heightened visual awareness. "I had these made specially," Gloria told Michael. "I found an author who writes stories about deaf characters." "Thank you," Michael said sincerely. "This means a lot." They watched as Keisha helped the boys understand their grandmother's gift. Jacob hugged his book to his chest, clearly delighted. I was wrong, Gloria said quietly to Michael. I wanted them to be like Emma, but they need to be themselves. Throughout the day, Keisha took photographs, capturing moments of joy and connection. Michael appeared in many of the pictures, fully engaged with his sons and their guests. No one looking at these photos would guess that just months ago he had been a stranger to his own children. As evening approached and the guests departed, Michael prepared for the most important moment of the day. He arranged 3 small chairs facing his own in the living room. On a table beside him, he placed photographs of Emma and other mementos from their life together. I have something special to share with you, he signed to the boys as Keisha led them in. The triplets sat down, curious about what would happen next. Michael took a deep breath and began signing the story he had practiced for weeks. Today I want to tell you about your mother, he signed carefully. Her name was Emma. She had blonde hair like yours and a beautiful smile. He showed them photographs, Emma playing piano, Emma on their wedding day, Emma pregnant with them. She was excited to meet you, Michael continued. She loved music and wanted to teach you all about it. She bought a piano for you before you were even born. Jacob signed a question. Did she know we couldn't hear? Michael shook his head. No, she died before we knew that. But she loved you very much, even before she met you. He told them the story of how he and Emma met at a charity auction where she had outbid everyone for a dinner date with him. She said it was the best money she ever spent, Michael signed, smiling at the memory. Then, with trembling hands, Michael signed the words he had never expressed before. I love you. I'm sorry I was afraid. I want to know you. The room was silent. Michael waited, his heart pounding. Jacob was the first to respond. Tears filled his eyes as he jumped up and threw his arms around his father in a fierce hug. James had many questions. What was Mom's favorite food? Did she like swimming like I do? What color did she like best? Joshua nodded solemnly, signing, Thank you for telling us. I forgive you for being afraid. The emotional conversation continued as the boys asked more questions about their mother. Michael answered each one honestly, signing until his fingers ached. Later, after the boys were finally in bed, Michael felt emotionally exhausted but peaceful. For the first time since Emma died, he had shared her memory with the people who mattered most. Keisha found him sitting quietly in the kitchen. You did a wonderful thing today, she said. The boys needed to know about her. I needed it too, Michael admitted. Thank you for helping me prepare. It's been amazing watching you change, Keisha said softly. Emma would be proud of you. Their moment was interrupted by Michael's phone buzzing loudly on the counter. He checked the screen and frowned. It's Robert, he said. That's strange. He knows it's the boy's birthday. The message made Michael's stomach drop. Emergency board meeting called for tomorrow morning. Carolyn's gathered enough votes to block your project and possibly remove you as CEO. We need to talk now. Michael looked up at Keisha. The peace of the evening shattered. I might lose my company tomorrow. Robert arrived at Michael's house 20 minutes later. They sat in the kitchen while Michael explained what had happened at the triplets' birthday party. I'm glad the boys had a good day, Robert said. But we have a serious problem. Carolyn called an emergency board meeting for 9 o'clock tomorrow morning. What exactly is she planning? Michael asked. She's gathered enough support to block your accessibility technology initiative, Robert explained, and some board members are considering removing you as CEO. They can't do that, Michael protested. I founded the company. They can if they believe you're not acting in the company's best interests, Robert said. Carolyn has convinced several key investors that your personal project demonstrates unstable leadership during a critical merger period. Michael rubbed his eyes, tired from the emotional day. She's been waiting for an opportunity like this for years. You need to be prepared for tomorrow, Robert warned. This will be the fight of your professional life. Michael barely slept that night. He reviewed company documents and practiced his defense of the accessibility initiative. By 5 o'clock in the morning, he was dressed in his best suit, ready for battle. "You're leaving early," Keisha said, finding him in the kitchen. "Emergency board meeting," Michael explained. "Carolyn Winters is trying to take my company." "Because of the deaf technology project?" Michael nodded. "Partly. She's using it as evidence that I'm distracted from the merger." "Is she right?" Keisha asked quietly. "No," Michael said, then paused. "Maybe. I don't know anymore. No. The company used to be everything to me. Now your priorities have changed," Keisha finished for him. "Yes," Michael admitted, "and that terrifies me." Michael left before the boys woke up. He hated missing their first morning as 6-year-olds, but he had no choice. At home, Keisha helped the triplets unpack their birthday presents. They were still excited from yesterday's party, signing rapidly about their favorite moments. "Elena from NASA was so cool," James signed enthusiastically. "I want to build spaceships too." "I liked Marcus and his buildings," Joshua signed. "He makes places for people." Jacob was busy drawing a picture of the deaf superhero from Gloria's book. The doorbell rang, and Keisha went to answer it. A delivery person stood there with 3 large boxes. "Special delivery for Jacob James and Joshua Thompson," the delivery person said. "Signature required." Keisha signed for the packages and brought them to the boys. "Look what came for you!" "One for each of you." The boys tore open the boxes to find 3 identical tablet computers. But these weren't ordinary tablets. A note from Michael explained they were specially designed with sign language learning programs and visual communication tools. "Your father ordered these weeks ago," Keisha explained, helping them turn on the devices. "They're made specially for deaf children." The boys were delighted. Joshua immediately began exploring the educational programs. James found games that used visual cues instead of sound. Jacob discovered a drawing application that taught art and sign language together. Seeing how happy the tablets made the boys, Keisha had an idea. She called Michael, who was just about to enter the boardroom. "The tablets arrived," she told him. "The boys love them. Do you have a minute to video chat before your meeting?" Michael checked his watch. The meeting would start in 10 minutes. "Yes, put them on." Keisha activated the video chat feature on Joshua's tablet. The boys crowded around the screen, their faces lighting up when they saw their father. "Thank you for the tablets," Joshua signed excitedly. "They're so cool," James added. Jacob held up his drawing, a picture of Michael signing, "I love you." "You're welcome," Michael signed back, smiling despite his stress. "I'll see you after my meeting." When the video ended, Michael took a deep breath and entered the boardroom. Every seat at the long table was filled. Carolyn Winters sat near the head of the table, a position usually reserved for Michael. "Thank you all for coming," Michael said confidently, taking his seat. "I understand there are concerns to address." Carolyn stood and distributed folders to each board member. "I've prepared a detailed analysis of the company's recent performance," she said. "As you'll see on page 3, several key metrics have declined as Michael's attendance at work has decreased." She displayed a chart on the large screen showing meeting attendance, work hours, and project involvement. "The merger with Miller Group is the most important deal in our history. Yet Michael has been increasingly absent, focused instead on personal matters." Several board members nodded in agreement. One spoke up, "We're concerned about your commitment, Michael. This merger needs your full attention." "And what about this deaf technology project?" another asked. "It seems completely outside our business model." Michael stood, feeling unexpectedly calm. Seeing his son's happy faces before the meeting had centered him in a way no preparation could have. "I won't deny that my focus has shifted somewhat," Michael began. 5 months ago, I was a workaholic who barely knew my own children. I've since made changes to be more present in their lives, but that hasn't diminished my commitment to this company." He turned to the concern about the accessibility technology. "As for the new initiative, I believe it represents an important growth opportunity." Michael distributed his own folders. This market research shows the untapped potential in accessibility technology. He clicked to a new slide on the screen. And these are letters of interest from major companies regarding our accessibility innovations. Microsoft, Apple, Google, and 2 major telecommunications firms have all expressed interest in partnership opportunities. The board members looked surprised as they reviewed the letters. Michael continued, "The deaf and hard of hearing market includes over 20 million Americans. Current solutions are inadequate and overpriced. Thomson Technologies can do better, expanding our market while making a positive social impact." Carolyn looked annoyed at this unexpected evidence. "These are just preliminary interest letters, not contracts," she pointed out. "The risk remains substantial during a critical merger period." The debate continued for another hour. Eventually, the board chair called for a break to deliberate privately. Michael stepped out into the hallway, exhausted but hopeful. He called Keisha. "How are the boys doing?" "They're fine," she assured him. "They're still playing with their new tablets." "How's the meeting going?" "I don't know," Michael admitted. "But I wanted to tell you something. Regardless of what happens today, I won't go back to being an absent father. The company may bear my name, but the boys carry my heart." "Michael," Keisha's voice was soft. "I mean it," he said. "If I have to choose, I choose them." The board chair called Michael back into the room. The members looked serious as he took his seat. "We've reached a decision," the chair announced. "After careful consideration, we believe Thomson Technologies should move forward with both the merger and the accessibility division." Michael felt relief wash over him, but the chair wasn't finished. "However, we have concerns about dividing your attention. Therefore, Carolyn Winters will direct the new accessibility division, reporting directly to the board. You will remain CEO, focusing primarily on completing the merger." It wasn't a complete victory, but Michael could accept the compromise. "I agree to these terms," he said, extending his hand to Carolyn. "I look forward to seeing what you can do with the accessibility division." Carolyn shook his hand, her smile tight. "I'll make it successful," she promised, "though perhaps not in the way you envisioned." When Michael returned home that afternoon, he was surprised to find Dr. Martinez waiting in the living room with Keisha and the boys. "I hope you don't mind the unscheduled visit, Doctor," Martinez said. "I had some exciting news that couldn't wait." "What news?" Michael asked. Dr. Martinez smiled at Joshua. "Joshua has qualified for an accelerated learning program at the Massachusetts School for the Deaf. It's very selective. Only 5 students were chosen this year." "That's wonderful," Michael said, signing to Joshua. "I'm proud of you." "The program requires more parental involvement, Doctor," Martinez continued. "There are evening classes twice weekly and Saturday morning sessions." In the past, Michael would have immediately thought about how this would affect his work schedule. Now he didn't hesitate. "We'll make it work," he signed to Joshua. "I'll be there." Joshua's face lit up with a smile that made everything, the board meeting, the compromise, the stress, completely worth it. That night, Michael moved the framed stock certificate from his company's IPO from his office wall to a storage box. In its place, he hung the Triplets' birthday artwork. The colorful drawings weren't as impressive as the stock certificate that had made him a billionaire, but they represented something far more valuable. As Michael tucked the boys in for the night, James asked in sign language if their father had to go back to working late hours. For the first time, Michael could honestly respond, "No, I've figured out what really matters, and it's not in that office downtown." 3 years passed, each day bringing small changes that added up to a complete transformation of the Thomson family. The mansion that had once felt empty and cold now buzzed with activity and purpose. On a bright spring morning, Michael sat at the breakfast table signing with his sons, now 9 years old. Though still identical in appearance, their personalities had blossomed in different directions. "My art will be in the school display next week," Jacob signed excitedly. His digital artwork had recently won a regional competition for elementary students. "I beat my best swimming time yesterday," James added, his hands moving quickly. He had joined a swim team for deaf athletes and was already winning medals. Joshua carefully adjusted his glasses before signing, "I finished the math problems, doctor." Chen gave me. They were challenging but interesting. He was participating in a national mathematics competition, the only deaf student to qualify in his age group. "I'm proud of all of you," Michael signed back, his hands now moving with the confidence of someone who had been signing for years. Keisha entered the kitchen carrying a stack of mail. "Good morning, everyone. Michael, there's another school asking about visiting the Learning Center." The Thompson Learning Center for Deaf Education now occupied the entire east wing of the mansion. What had started as a small project had grown into a recognized educational resource, hosting students and teachers from across Massachusetts. "Schedule them for next Tuesday," Michael replied. "I'll be back from New York by then." After breakfast, Michael walked through the Learning Center. Classrooms that had once been guest bedrooms now contained the latest educational technology. Many of the devices had been developed by Thompson Technologies' Accessibility Division, which had become the fastest-growing segment of the company. Robert met Michael in his home office later that morning. Though Michael remained CEO, Robert had taken on more operational responsibilities, while Michael balanced his business duties with his commitment to deaf education. "The merger integration is finally complete," Robert reported. "Miller Group is fully part of Thompson Technologies now." "Only took 3 years," Michael said with a smile. "How's Carolyn doing with the accessibility division?" "Surprisingly well," Robert admitted. "The voice-to-sign language translator app has over 2 million downloads, and the visual alarm system is being installed in hotels nationwide." "She was the right person for the job," Michael said. "She has the business drive I have, but without the personal distractions." "Speaking of personal matters," Robert said with a knowing smile, "have you asked Keisha yet?" Michael patted his pocket where a small jewelry box was hidden. "Tonight, don't tell anyone." The relationship between Michael and Keisha had evolved gradually. After Keisha completed her degree in deaf education, funded by a scholarship program Michael had established, they began dating officially. The triplets had enthusiastically approved, especially Jacob, who had made a drawing of the 5 of them together as a family. That afternoon, Gloria Thompson arrived at the mansion. She had moved to Boston permanently 2 years ago and now lived in a condo nearby. She took ASL classes at the community center 3 times a week and volunteered at the Learning Center. "The new parents group is coming today," Gloria reminded Michael. "I've prepared my talk." Gloria now regularly spoke to parents of newly diagnosed deaf children, sharing her own journey from denial to acceptance. Her story of initial resistance and eventual understanding resonated with many families struggling to adjust. "I still can't believe how wrong I was," Gloria told Michael as they walked to the Learning Center. "Pushing those oral-only programs. Fighting against sign language." "You wanted what you thought was best," Michael said. "We all did." "Emma would be so proud of what you've created here," Gloria said, touching his arm gently. In the afternoon, Michael attended Joshua's math club at Massachusetts School for the Deaf. The school had become a second home for the triplets, who attended classes there while also participating in programs with hearing students. Joshua explained a complex math problem to his team, his signs precise and technical. Michael watched with pride. 3 years ago, he couldn't understand a single sign. Now he followed every concept his brilliant son expressed. That evening, Michael and Keisha had dinner alone at a restaurant overlooking Boston Harbor. After 3 years of cautious dating, both were ready for the next step. "The boys asked if you were going to live with us forever," Michael said, taking her hand across the table. "What did you tell them?" Keisha asked. Michael pulled out the small jewelry box and opened it to reveal a diamond ring. "I told them I was going to ask you tonight, but only if they approved." Keisha's eyes widened. "And what did they say?" "They made this Michael said, pulling out a drawing signed by all three boys. It showed 5 stick figures holding hands with the words, "Please say yes," written at the top. Tears filled Keisha's eyes as she nodded. Yes, absolutely yes. 2 weeks later, the Thompson Foundation for Deaf Education held its annual fundraising gala. The elegant event at Boston's finest hotel brought together leaders from the business world, the deaf community, and education advocates. Michael stood at the podium, his hands signing simultaneously with his spoken words, a skill that had taken years to master. 3 years ago, I didn't know how to sign a single word, Michael told the audience. I was afraid of my son's deafness because it represented a world I didn't understand. The large screens behind him displayed photographs of the Learning Center and the children who benefited from its programs. Today, we celebrate not just what we've built, but the journey that brought us here, Michael continued. The journey from fear to understanding, from silence to communication. The Triplets performed next, signing a song on stage while images of nature appeared behind them. Their confidence and joy were evident to everyone. "They're amazing," Elena Rodriguez said to Michael after the performance. She had become a regular visitor to the Learning Center, inspiring many young deaf children with her NASA work. "They had good teachers," Michael replied, glancing at Keisha, who was now officially the educational director of the Thompson Foundation. Later in the evening, Carolyn Winters approached Michael. Their professional relationship had evolved into a respectful partnership over the years. "The new tactile alert system is testing well," she reported. "The focus groups love it." "I knew you'd make the division successful," Michael said sincerely. "It helped that you were right about the market size," Carolyn admitted. "Though I'll deny saying that if you quote me." As the gala ended, Michael stood at the edge of the ballroom, watching his family interact with guests. Gloria was demonstrating signs to a group of interested parents. The Triplets were showing their friends how to use the new Thompson Technologies communication devices. Keisha was discussing education strategies with teachers from different schools. David Wilkins, whose daughter Sophia was now 12, joined Michael. "Quite different from that first deaf community gathering when you looked terrified, isn't it?" Michael laughed. "I was terrified. I had no idea what I was doing." "None of us did," David said. "But you've created something special here, Michael. These kids will have opportunities we couldn't have imagined." After the last guests departed, Michael found his sons tired but happy. They had stayed up far past their usual bedtime for the special occasion. "Did we do good?" James signed sleepily as Michael guided them to the car. "You did wonderful," Michael signed back. "I'm so proud of you." At home, after the boys were in bed, Michael and Keisha stood in the living room looking at the family photographs that now covered the walls. Many showed Michael and the Triplets signing together, their faces alive with understanding. "It's hard to remember how it was before," Keisha said softly, "when you couldn't sign at all." "I remember," Michael said. "I was lost. You found me." He picked up a photograph of Emma that still held a place of honor. She would have loved all of this. The foundation, the learning center, the boys' achievements. She would have loved seeing the father you've become, Keisha added, squeezing his hand. As they turned out the lights, Michael thought about the journey of the past 3 years. He had learned that love doesn't require perfect speech or perfect hearing. It requires presence, patience, and the courage to learn a new language, whether made of words, signs, or simply showing up day after day. The silence in the Thompson house was no longer empty. It was filled with understanding, with connection, and with a language that went beyond words, a language the entire family now shared. If you enjoyed today's video, I'm sure you'll love the next one. Don't waste time. Just click on the screen.